So, Steve, here we are, Retail
Yes.
Rebellion.
It's our every other week visit to try and figure out the problems of the world.
But now we've named it, right? Now we've called it Retail Rebellion.
Hmm.
We've put a label on it. So
Yeah.
let's start there. Retail Rebellion. That's
Hmm.
what we're encouraging people to do is to think differently, right? To
Yeah.
break out of that old mindset. And you were saying to me earlier, we need to think about this not as a zero sum problem, but as a opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. The old saying, a high tide floats all boats. When
Yeah.
one succeeds, it's possible that everyone can succeed. It's more likely that everyone will succeed. And I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, the problems of our industry are only going to be solved by people working together, not competing. Complaining and competing doesn't get you anywhere. It's time to come up with something different.
I
And that's
completely
retail
agree.
rebellion.
Retail rebellion. So let's
Yeah.
rebel against that mindset. And I know that there will be people out there because I've had these conversations in different areas before. So I know that there will be people out there that will be saying you're being a bit of a Pollyanna, you're
Hmm.
ignoring the issues at hand, you don't understand, and all of those things. But actually we do understand, don't we? So
Hmm.
let's give
Hmm.
a bit of background on where we come from. So Steve, what's your background within the creative industries within retail?
Yeah. So, well, the short story, and I can make a short story really long, but I'll try my best not to. Um, the short story is this. I started in high school doing art. I did as much art as I possibly could, namely to avoid academics, but painting, drawing, ceramics, filmmaking, jewelry making, leaded glass windows. I did it all. It was really a really great program we offered at my school.
Mm.
As I was about to graduate, reality sunk in. I needed to get a job. And
Mhm.
so I got a job at the local art supply store. And I delivered art materials, actually commercial art products. This back in the 70s when there was a commercial business. I delivered them all over town. Eventually worked my way up to store manager and was in charge of the art department, ordering. And I, from there, went to work for my wholesaler that I bought from. It's a little tiny family-owned business in Northern California, and I spent almost 40 years there. And we went from being this little tiny Northern California wholesaler to being a national wholesale distributor with our own brands, doing private label, 60,000 SKUs to almost 3,000 customers. And it was a great opportunity and it was a great ride. So, to sum it up, I've spent my entire adult career, business career, working career in the art materials, craft, creative industries on the retail side and the supplier side. And I still go back to some of my early experiences when I first went out into the field and how inspirational I found it to work with somebody who was trying to fulfill their dream of owning their own business and making their communities a little bit more vibrant and a little bit better by making art and creative activities easy for people to do. And
Mhm.
it connected, it resonated with me, and I'm here. Here I am. And I think I bring a unique perspective.
Yeah, I mean that's a big journey that you went on there from like a small, what was a relatively small company when you started to
Yeah.
being, I mean, when I joined the industry, I knew it as a pretty enormous company. It was pretty massive when I first joined the industry like 15 years ago. So I knew it to be, a market leading company. So a lot of change happened. But from what we've been talking about, it sounds like what we actually need to do is go back to some of those original principles of community building and
Hmm.
spreading the message and being hands on and all of those things.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that from the retailer's perspective and their supplier's perspective, the part that I really think is critical to success, if we're going to look back, is to look back at the way they partnered in the past.
Yes.
There wasn't Amazon, there wasn't any email because there wasn't internet at one
Yeah.
point. And so the manufacturers were really hands-on. Their reps came in and did like, remember reps coming in and working in my store. They would set stuff up, they would train the staff, they would give us samples. And, I know the world has changed, and I know that retailing is a much more complex scenario today than it was in the 70s and 80s. But the reality of it is the relationship part of it has not changed, in my
Yeah.
opinion. The relationship between a brand and a retailer and a consumer, an end user,
Hmm.
is actually, I believe, to be stronger today than ever before. And so, to me, I like your idea. Let's look back. What worked before? What did we move away from in pursuit of fill in the blank?
Yeah.
That maybe is working against us, and should we go back to it, or is there a new version of that? And I think, that's what I enjoy about your and my conversations, wherever they are, however they take place, is that we're constantly kind of kicking around those ideas of how can we light the fire under this industry and help them take advantage of all the trends that are out there working in our favor as an industry.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because obviously we're talking about looking back, and I was mentoring someone earlier this week, and we were talking about a company, and I said to them like, the issue with that company that you're talking about is that they are stuck in the past. They keep
Hmm.
doing the things they done 20 years ago, expecting them to
Right.
resonate the same way. And I
Hmm.
think what we have to accept when we look back, it's really important to look back and learn what you can learn, and to understand that the industry has changed, technology has changed, the world has changed, but
Hmm.
people fundamentally have not changed. And so
Right.
the lesson you have to learn is like, which bits do we pull out? Because there's absolutely no point in saying, well, let's not do email marketing because 20 years ago we didn't need it, for instance, right? Why not take advantage of these changes? Why not embrace these changes? Like, you have to keep the bits that work now, but you also have to look back on the bits that worked then. And I think that human connection is the
Yeah.
bit that we need to come back to, because at the
Right.
moment, so much of the industry, so much of online retail generally is in faceless transactions. And I
Hmm.
think we're all striving for that human connection. And as I said to you earlier, there are certain things that you can buy from these like faceless marketplaces
Hmm.
because it's a standard product. You know, if you need
Yeah.
legal pads or water bottles or whatever, you know what you're getting. So you just want the best price, right? But when
Hmm.
you're talking about our creative industries like art materials and craft products and all of that, like, you need some hands-on guidance. You need something more. You need a human connection. I mean, I recently
Right.
tried resin pouring, and I really wanted, like, I didn't know what to get. I didn't know all the bits that you need to make that work. I could have ordered it all off of a leading marketplace and got the cheapest possible price, but I actually went to a small craft fair, spoke to someone who done it, and bought their starter kit that they'd put together with all of the
Hmm.
components.
Hmm.
And at not one moment did I think about the price of that. I just thought, I'm getting this one-on-one advice from her. She was telling me her techniques. She gave a little demonstration. She'd, created this kit that was perfect. That whole bit you're never going to get from an anonymous marketplace. You're only ever
No,
going to
no,
get
no.
from a retailer.
Exactly, exactly. And I think, that's a really great example because you obviously, and we still need to hear about your past, but you obviously have a lot of experience. You know how to do a lot of different activities and could teach people. I mean, you're that well versed, but still you wanted to learn something new, so you went to the person who's best suited to teach you that. And I think the trap that's easy to get caught up in as a retailer or as a brand or a supplier is that selling something, that relationship between buyer and seller is a loop. In other words,
Yeah.
I teach, they love, they buy, they use. I teach, they love, they buy. It just goes round and round. Well, it doesn't work that way
Yeah.
because people learn. You learned how to do something. So now, next time, you're going to feel confident. You don't need to be taught, and
Mhm.
maybe you don't need to go to that source because you're in a hurry. So you'll go for convenience. And so the trick is to accept the fact that your customers evolve. They learn and they will grow and they will take on what you did for them and do it for themselves. So now you have to reinvent that next, what am I going to give you? What am I going to help you? And
Mhm.
I think that's where these partnerships are really, really needed to keep feeding the retailers with new things, new ideas, new products. And I gotta be honest with you, the suppliers want nothing more than to have retailers do that.
Yeah.
I just don't get the disconnect, but that's why we're talking, I guess. But
Yeah.
seriously, So what about you? I mean, I've only known you for a short period of time, but I would love to hear again a little bit about how you arrived here and what your experiences you went through that helped you form your perspective and unique point of view, which is, I think, an excellent one, by the way.
Thank you. So mine was a twisty journey to get here, to be honest. I trained to be a lawyer. And I know people are always shocked to hear that. So my dream from quite a young age was to be a lawyer and to do forensics. And I was hoping to work for like
Hmm.
MI5 or someone like that
Ooh,
here in the I
yeah.
know. And I went through the first stage of recruitment for MI5 as well, by the way, which was really interesting. And then I started, you have to do like a pupillage for law, so you work under a
Hmm.
barrister or solicitor or whatever. And I was having my review meeting with my boss, who was lovely, by the way. I've got nothing bad to say about him. And he was saying to me, you've got so much potential, and you could, if are at the top of your game, you could be at the time as a QC, which is a Queen's Counsel. It's now King's Counsel because we have a king.
Hmm.
He was like, you could be Queen's Counsel and you could earn 200,000 a year and you could do this, and that's the top of your game. And I was sitting in this meeting, and I know that he was really trying to be encouraging, enthusiastic, and on my £10,000 a year junior salary, that should have seemed
Hmm.
enormous to me, right? But I
Right.
just remember sitting there thinking, I don't want a lid. I don't want a ceiling. I don't want to feel trapped. And
Hmm.
as he was talking, trying to inspire me, I felt more and more trapped and hemmed in. Um, and I'd seen the way the law industry works and all of these kind of things. And I just thought, this is not for me. And I realized that the last 7 years that I'd spent qualifying and getting to this point, I didn't want to do it anymore. And I was like, oh, what do I do? Um, so I took a part-time job in marketing, and then I got made redundant from that. And I was like, I've now been made redundant for something I don't even want to do again.
Hmm.
Um, and so I started my business. And my business initially was to illustrate children's books. That's what I wanted to do, was to illustrate
Hmm.
children's books. And it's very, very hard to break into that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I like craft, I like making. So I'd always made things. My mum had this
Hmm.
cupboard in our living room that was full of paper and glue and wool and fabric and
Oh, how
sewing. And it was
fun.
like,
Yeah.
it was a whole mishmash. My mum is one of those people that like starts a hobby, and then she started sort of knitting and then would do crochet and then would do sewing. So there's always bits of stuff everywhere.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I'd always made things, and I just thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to like design craft supplies? And I didn't really think about how that happened. I just
Hmm.
emailed a craft shopping channel here in the UK and went, do you want someone to design craft supplies? And to cut a long story very short, 4 weeks later, I was live on TV launching my first craft product. And within, I think it was like 3.5 years, I was approaching like the seven-figure mark, and I'd expanded into all these areas like homeware and clothing and all of that. But my heart always comes back to the creative industries, because
Hmm.
number one, all of my businesses, all of my brands have some kind of creativity at the heart of them.
Right.
And secondly, it's where I started. So I feel like
Hmm.
that's the seed of my business, was craft supplies, and everything's kind of grown out of that. So my heart always comes back to it. And I just love, I love creativity. I love making. I think it switches part of your brain off, whether that's coloring or sewing or painting or whatever.
Hmm.
Like, I do a bit of everything. And I just think it switches your brain off. And I think people need, especially now in this age of technology and
Yeah.
AI and all of these things, we need to be encouraged to touch and feel and make and all of those things. We need to encourage that more and more, because it creates so many skills. People
Hmm.
think painting is just painting. Actually, it's not. It's about knowing
Yeah.
texture and feel and use and
Hmm.
material and all of
Right.
those things. It encourages so many, fine motor skills in children and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, making has my heart. So that's
Yeah.
how I got here.
Oh, great. How interesting.
I know.
Lawyer. MI5. Oh my gosh.
I know. And now I color
Uh,
in.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was going to be a filmmaker. I was going to be a director. And so, turns out I ended up in business, which was, I never would have dreamed that.
Yeah.
I was in high school and all I wanted to do was make films and do other things. And, it just turns out that I found something else. And it's funny because, I haven't worked in the industry. I worked for myself since 2018, a
Yeah.
couple of jobs just to pay some bills and get health insurance and whatnot. But, I really, really wanted to kind of do what you do, which is to have no ceiling, but more importantly, have no boss, and do what fits me. And I think, what's interesting about your story is you had that moment, that defining moment, talking to your supervisor when you realize, I don't want this. This is confining. This isn't who I am, whatever. And you had that moment and it changed everything for you. It took a
Yeah.
while for it to play out, but it changed everything for you. And I've had those moments as well, but they always come down to the same thing, which is what I'm not. I'm not a business person. I'm
Mhm.
not a manager. I'm a problem solver. And at the end of the day, my personal why is just help people solve problems, achieve their goals, and get stuff done.
Yeah.
And if once you look at life through that perspective,
Mhm.
everything can change and everything's available to you. And so I think that's really great. What a great story. So
That's
between us, we have a
actually
lot of experience.
we do, and I think it's good because we've kind of between us we've covered everything, right? Because you've worked from distribution, manufacturing, retail, and I've kind of worked from the other end of like product creation, design, retail, and
Right.
manufacturing small scale. So I think we come at it from both ends of that scale, which is really good. And what you were saying before about like how you're a problem solver, you're a visionary. I think that speaks so much to retailers because I think that's what retailers are. They're problem
Yeah.
solvers. You go into a store. I mean, if you take my resin pouring example, my issue is I want to do resin pouring. My problem is I have no idea where to start on what I need. And the
Hmm.
retailer was the person that solved my problem. She said to me, this is
Right.
how you start, this is how you do it, and here's a kit you can take home with you. So I had a problem, if you like. It's a, first world creative problem, but it's still a problem.
Yeah.
And she solved it for me. And that's really what we're talking about, that human connection that you're not going to get from a marketplace. It's going to be like, my problem is I want water bottles at the cheapest possible price. And the algorithm
Hmm.
of that marketplace finds them for me, right? That's
Hmm.
one type of solution finding. But what we're talking about in creativity takes a human element, takes a human
Yeah.
touch, takes a person to
Right.
understand where you're coming from. And also
Hmm.
sometimes, those people might be frustrated. They may have already tried it and it's gone wrong. They may have issues. They may have, you know, started something and want to go somewhere else with it. And that's where you need that human interaction of, okay, I get you. I understand.
Right.
People want to be seen and understood, right? And you can only do that
Exactly.
with people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they do, and they want to be supported. I think
Yeah.
that that support that you get from an independent retailer, try this. I love it. Or what are you working on? Bring it in. I want to see it. Or we have
Yeah.
a wall over there if you want to hang some of them up. We put up artists from time to time. I think it's those connections that, at the end of the day, I think business is always going to be a person-to-person situation or whatever.
Yeah.
And AI can do what AI is going to do, but it's never going to be a substitute for that.
No.
And that is the unique secret sauce of the retailer is they make those connections. And the independent retailer makes them on a community level, on a personal level, with passion because
Yeah.
they went into business because they had a passion to do something. And so I think it's really critical that we focus on helping that always trying to figure out how to help people do what they're uniquely suited to do.
Hmm.
And that's what retailers are uniquely suited to do, connect person to
Yeah.
person, at
So
least on the brick and mortar side.
so let's talk a little bit about how we ended up here, right? Because
Yeah.
we met, like you said, fairly recently at a trade show, and we were talking about our just general background and our history
Hmm.
and our view on the industry and all of that kind of thing. And we both kind of came to this conclusion of what we thought the issues in our creative industries are right now, right? Which is how we've ended
Right.
up here at Retail Rebellion. So, shall we talk a little bit about what our perspective is and
Sure.
what our big plan is?
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, I don't know, you want to go first with your perspective, and then we'll kind of meet in the middle and explain where they come together, and the two have become greater than the sum of its parts, so to speak?
Sure. So, from my perspective, I started obviously my business academy 3 years ago, where I was coaching small businesses and entrepreneurs. And then out of that, I created the Hurley Report, which is a data and insights led trend report. And I realized that people are hungry for data, they're hungry for what they think is going to fix their business. And we're seeing, retail. I've got a couple of retail businesses myself. I've seen that retail is kind of in the bin right now. It's really, really tough. Even with a point of
Hmm.
difference, it's really, really tough. If you are selling, the same brand of paint as a shop down the road, it must be even tougher because all you've got to compete on is either price or perspective in how you sell it.
Right.
And so that was my kind of thing in the industry. Was I've realized over the last year since starting the Hurley Report was people are desperate for this data, they're desperate for these insights, they're desperate for the thing that is going to uplift their business, it's going to up level
Hmm.
their business and going to
Hmm.
make a change. And then obviously, you see that highlighted even more at trade shows, right? Because everyone's
Right.
talking and everyone's having discussions as we did.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
tell me a bit about what your perspective is.
So my perspective is similar, but coming as we said earlier, we come at the same problem from different directions.
Yeah.
And mine is coming more from obviously from the supplier side, the retailer, the supplier side. And I guess there are three dynamics that have sort of pointed me in this direction and helped me form my point of view. One is in networking both with manufacturers and retailers, really starting in earnest at the NAMTA Creativation Show in April.
Mhm.
I kept hearing the same problem described from two different points of view. From
Mhm.
the retailer's perspective, we need help and the manufacturers are ignoring us. And
Yeah.
I don't mean give us better pricing. We would take it, but we need help doing things in our store. It is
Yeah.
hard to run a store.
Mhm.
And that's a true statement. From the manufacturer's side, I was hearing the same old thing. It's like, oh, we come out with these great programs and new products, and they don't even remember the new programs after we tell them, and they cherry pick the new products, and we can't get full representation, and it's impossible to run national campaigns because we can't get everybody to participate.
Mhm.
It's like herding cats. And on the other side is do more, do more, do more. And why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you doing more? I'm like, well, there's an opportunity here.
Yeah.
The second thing is that in my little journey since in two, over between 2018 and today, I did have a job. I worked for about 3 years in Run Specialty. And Run Specialty is running shoes. And a typical running shoe store carries a number of categories, but running, clothing, socks, nutrition, recovery equipment, massagers and tapes and junk like that.
Mhm.
And it struck me, I ran 3 stores out in California for a year, and it struck me the difference in the approach from the manufacturers. In Run Specialty, two teams call on stores. A sales team, which they see twice, 3 times a year to write the orders and to get organized and get their forecasts in for the factories. And then a marketing team, which they can see literally almost every week. Because the marketing team are these in this case, they're young runners that are also want a career in marketing, have a fresh minted degree, and they put them in a car and they drive around and they demonstrate shoes and they teach and they go to fun runs and to drop-in runs and they let people try on all their different shoes or whatever products they're selling. And the amount of time and attention put into developing community and making those
Mhm.
connections in Run Specialty is 3x, 5x maybe what it is in art supplies.
Yeah.
Art supplies, on the other hand, is an inventory intensive business, way more so than Run Specialty. It's only natural that's where the time is going, is
Yeah.
into inventory management and curating assortment plans and putting up the point of sale displays and all this other stuff. Well, who's going to build the community? There's no time. There's only so many hours in a day. So that was number two. And then number three was going back to my past. I, I know that what works best to grow business is to put our heads together and figure it out.
Yeah.
What is it going to take to help you get this off your shelf? And so we've always had my experience, my orientation is pull, don't push products through the supply chain. And all of that combined, I've got this, my point of view now is what we're talking about is how do we create a paradigm shift
Hmm.
that enables brands to be closer to retailers, retailers to be closer to brands, and everybody have a closer, more vibrant, dynamic relationship, a better word, with the consumer.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mission that I'm on. And when we met, I knew in an instant you're going in the same direction.
Yeah, yeah, because for me, I feel like the consumer has almost been lost in the shuffle. And I
Yeah.
feel like there used to be a difference in the industry of it used to be that we kind of showed a product and we said to the consumer, this is a great product, this is how you use it, these are things you can do with it. We inspired the consumer, we led them on a journey. And I feel like that somewhat got lost in the shuffle. And now it's just we need to churn out a ton of product and just put it
Hmm.
on the internet for people to find and
Yeah.
discover. And I think that you then get bogged down with the customer doesn't or the consumer doesn't really get what they want. So they sort of go, I want a butterfly. No, not like that, like
Hmm.
that. No, not like that, like that. And then the manufacturer is racing to keep up with these different shiny objects that the consumer wants. And we've missed the fact that in the middle is the retailer that could guide them to the shiny objects you've already got. Because that
Yeah.
actually does what the consumer wants to do, but no one's listening to the consumer. What they actually, the consumer thinks they want the butterfly, but actually,
Hmm.
what they might want is something you already have. And we've just lost that whole magic of the consumer journey, that
Yeah.
exploration, the discovery, that education piece in the middle. And you're right, it's become all about inventory and data. And data in and of itself is what I've realized through doing the Hurley report. Data in and of itself is only any good if you've got insights into it, right? Because you can make
Right.
data look
Right. Of
like anything. I
course.
remember getting some data for the first Hurley report and thinking that it was an insane figure that was quoted for the creative industries, the value of the creative industries. And I said, even in my own head, I know this is wrong. And when I sat and broke the figure down and I went into it, they'd actually put things of like hardware store data into it as like wood
Hmm.
for woodworking. And I was like, no, because like if my
Hmm.
partner puts up a shelf, that shouldn't be part of the creative industries. That's wrong.
Yeah.
And they were
Right.
putting in things like cameras for photography, but they were also including camera phones, which is everyone
Hmm.
with a phone. So everyone that used Snapchat was now in this data, and it was like, no, this is all wrong. So data in and of itself is only good with insight, and I
Right.
think that we've gone too much down this data led path and not listening to the consumer. And for suppliers and manufacturers and distributors, you can only really hear that consumer voice through the filter of the retailer because
Right.
as a distributor or a manufacturer, there's too many voices. So what
Yeah.
you need is
Yeah.
these retailers as your representatives out there to
Hmm.
filter through and give you one voice. So instead of having a million voices, you've got 10
Right.
that are giving you that data. And that's where I think that we've lost that. And we need to reconnect with the consumer. But this is only going to happen, in my opinion, if the manufacturers, the suppliers, and the retailers start talking to each other and forming really, really strong partnerships and collaborations where there, and that's not just I've launched this program, do you want to do it or not? That's actually sitting down face to face, like you and I have, and gone, this is what I think. Let's put something that works for both of us together and doing
Right.
that really targeted one-on-one thing about what, because that program that you're trying to launch to put into 100 stores doesn't work for 100 stores. It maybe
Right.
works for 40 of them. So you need to speak to those retailers. And that's where I think we need those touch points. That's my perspective on it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do want to underscore one thing that you said because I think it's
Yeah.
really important. Going back to I'm paraphrasing here, but more products in more places,
Mm,
and thinking only in terms of SKU count and things like that. And I
mm.
would add one more metric to that, door count.
Yeah.
Retail stores are called
Yeah.
doors, and I think that depersonalizes it, if that's the right word,
Yeah.
um, and turns it into a number. So
Yeah.
I think that and this is, I don't want to ruffle feathers because I think this is a necessity of business, but at the same time, if you're not careful, it will work against you. The people who sell products, the manufacturers, distributors, and whatnot, they're focused on sales. And one of the reasons I left what I was doing to do something different was we had moved from measuring our success based on the strengths of our relationships and the
Mhm.
number of relationships and what we accomplish together with our customers to more sales. Everywhere we can sell it, whoever can fog a mirror, we want to sell them the product. And that indiscriminate approach to more, to always, just being focused on a number that is at the end of a quarter instead of at the
Yeah.
end of a decade is works against us,
Yeah.
and it's a necessity. You gotta do it. You gotta pay the bills. But I think there's a way to do both. I think there's a way to create a metric that's about relationships.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a way to have a shared ROI or a shared metric, a shared KPI. So in
Yeah.
other words, a retailer and the manufacturer agree to take equal ownership of accomplishing fill in the blank. And
Exactly.
that's the connection, the point of connection. Reverse that. It's not the point of connection. That's the way to get commitment. When
Hmm.
people commit to a key result or a result, they're more committed than they are to agreeing with an idea. We
Yeah.
can get everybody to agree with our ideas.
Mhm.
That is the easy part. Committing to it, following through with it is where it all breaks down. And I think whatever where we're going, and maybe this is a segue to talk a little bit about that. Where we want to go is got to incorporate into that is how do these conversations lead to commitment to change
Yeah.
and the acceptance that it's probably going to be a little messy before it looks beautiful,
Mhm.
but you got to do that to get there.
Yeah, I think you've got number one, you've got to have vision. Number two, I think it's a proven out model that people are more committed to change and to a result if they've bought into it, if they've worked for
Yeah.
it. If you're just given something, if I just give you a package for your store and go, here you go, here's a thing to set up, why do you care? I haven't given you a reason to care. I've given you a box of art materials. That's it.
Hmm.
I think you need a vision and you need both parties to buy into that vision. So, what is it that we're trying to achieve? And it shouldn't be a here's $100 box of art materials, sell it for $300. It should
Hmm.
be here's $100 box of art materials. We want to engage with this many people. We want to find one ambassador that will come in and lead classes. We want to reach 10,000 people in the marketing of that class program that we're going to be running. It needs to be that shared vision, and people need to buy into it because unless you've actually worked for something, you don't value it as much, right?
Hmm.
You don't feel it as much. And this is why, like, so my coffee chain in the UK, so like Starbucks, we've got Costa in the UK. This is
Oh
that's
yeah, we
my
we have one
local.
now.
Do you? Oh yeah,
We have one
yeah,
here in
you do.
Atlanta.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
do.
we have
I
a
remember.
Costa.
There's only
Yeah,
like four in the US, but yeah, you've got one.
right.
So my coffee chain, I go to Costa every day because it's closest to my house. They do this thing where you collect beans. Every time you buy a cup of coffee, you get a bean. And then when you've saved up 10 beans, you get a free cup of coffee, right? I have worked for that free coffee. So it tastes
Hmm.
great, right? I always get
Yeah,
a large
yeah,
one and it's always a great coffee and I love it. I've worked for it. If I
right.
just walked in and they said to me, the checkout's broken, so we're just going to give you a free coffee today, or if I make a coffee at home, it doesn't feel special because that's just my own coffee. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
anything. When I've worked for it, I've collected, I've saved, I've worked for
Hmm.
that thing.
Hmm.
It works. And I think that we have such a unique perspective in the creative industry because everything that we sell, manufacture, make, design is
Yeah.
work, right? You have to work for the skill. So if you're a painter, you have to work to be good at that, right? If you sew, you have to work to be good at that. I still haven't mastered that one. If you are a card maker, scrapbooker, whatever it is, there's work in that skill. And so people really buy into it. They have vision for it. They really want to do that thing. It's not easy. It's not like a pop-up card. You buy it, you go ding, and it's done.
Hmm.
Like you have to work for this thing. And that's such a unique thing for an industry to have. So I think that, all the raw ingredients are here.
Yeah.
what we need to do really is change our mindsets, right? Because it's so easy
Yeah.
to sit back and go, oh, if it wasn't for Amazon, if it wasn't for Temu, if it wasn't for these marketplaces, if it wasn't for the giant, if you didn't have a display in Walmart, all of those things, it's so easy to blame and shift perspective and not take accountability and not take responsibility for what you can control, just to blame it on external forces and go, well, it's not my fault.
Right.
And I think that's the thing is, I think we have to take the power back. We have to take that power back and go, what
Yeah.
can we control, right? What is it we can change within
Right.
we can't shut down Walmart or Amazon or Temu. We can't shut those down. We can't do anything. So what's
No.
within our control? How can we work together? Because we can control our little world, right? We can control
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
mine and your interactions. I can control interactions I have with other partners. You can control interactions with your other partners. What can we change, control, grow, build that is going to shift the needle, that is going to make
Yeah.
a difference? And that's where we move forward.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I think you're right. There are so many things that we can't control, and those things seem to be at the center of almost every conversation in our business. And that's, at the end of the day, they're going to be. But say it, talk about it, feel bad about it, complain about it, whatever, get it out of the way, and then focus on what you can do. And I want to come back. I think one pivot or one paradigm shift that we might consider as a good starting point is go back to your box of art supplies.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, and that's the way people sell. Here's a box of art supplies. I'm going to charge you 100. You're going to sell for 300. You're going to make 200. Sound good? Want one?
Yeah.
What if that seller or the retailer, could go either way, came in and said, listen, in October and November, I want to have 3 demonstration class type things in my store free, talking about how to make greeting cards for the holiday season.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about hand lettering, and we'll focus on embellishment and die cuts and papers and all the different ways that you can make beautiful cards. And the way we'll do that is we'll have a nice array of products that and we'll have teachers that will teach people how to use those products. So I've got the why, the demos, the how, we're going to teach people how to use them. And what do we need to do that? A box of art supplies. Want one? And
Yeah.
so, if you think about it as reversing the thinking and think from the consumer back, that just might be a good place to get people to start working differently together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thinking out loud, but
The funny thing is, right, I was speaking to someone at Creativation who is part of a paint company, and we were all in this panel discussion, and she was part of the panel, and someone said to her, how do you feel when someone comes in and they've like used this kind of cheap nasty paint instead of your paint? And I thought her attitude was so refreshing and forward thinking, because she said, well, I don't really care. The important thing for me is that they start to paint, because then
yeah,
as they get better at painting, they naturally will want better paint, right? And like
right.
you as a runner, you start with your just Walmart trainers, right? And then as you get better, you want better stuff, right? you
Yeah, of
you
course.
want the right shoes, you want the right equipment, you want the right paint, the right brushes, the right everything. And I think
Hmm.
that's the important thing is we need to build the community and just get people interested, because then naturally they are going to follow your ambassadors. So if you've got someone who represents your paint company, and then you get people who are buying Dollar Tree paints, but then they're watching this person and their stuff starts to come out better and they're getting better,
Yeah,
they're naturally going to
yeah,
want that paint, because they're like, well, I'm approaching this level of good now, so I want those kinds of materials. So I think the important thing is, yes, let's build that community. Let's build, by all means paint, as
yeah,
someone once
yeah.
said. And you know, we need our ambassadors, we need the people that represent our product, and
Hmm.
they need to be great ambassadors for our brand.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no point having someone that's using your paint this week and someone else's paint next week. It needs to be someone who's passionate about your brand, that represents your brand. And retailers, by the way, can help you find those people, right? Because if
Oh,
you're at
yeah.
classes or whatever, they can say,
Yeah.
you need to speak to this person, they're amazing. And this is where that two-way communication goes of like, we're looking for ambassadors. If anyone is in your store that you know of, let us know.
Yeah.
All of
Right.
that kind of thing. This communication, this two-way street really needs to get better for sure.
Yeah. I agree.
And
I agree.
from community comes commerce. It always follows. It
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
happens.
Exactly, exactly. You get somebody inspired to do something, they're going to buy the things they need to do it.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. And the more inspired they become, the more they buy,
Yeah.
and that's ultimately what you want.
Yeah.
So you and I are really great at noodling through all this stuff, and so I guess the big question is, and maybe this is our opportunity to start leaving some clues. What are we going to do about it? I think we've talked a
Yeah.
little bit about how we think we can approach it, but
Yeah.
what do you think we should share at this point?
Well, I think Steve, we should at least tell people that, for us, we've been so inspired by these conversations, and it's about taking our own advice, right? Because there's no point just talking about it. We have to be
Yeah.
leading the change. And I think that,
Hmm.
we can tell people that that's our mission behind all of the things that we're going to introduce you to over the next weeks and months, is that we are looking to lead the change, and we are looking to help
Yeah.
to make this pathway a lot clearer for both retailers and suppliers from our unique perspectives at both ends of this. So,
Right.
yeah, do you want to add anything
Yeah.
more to that?
No, I would say you hit the nail on the head. We don't really have as much solutions as we do the belief that the problem can be solved. Now
Yeah,
what we need to do is really understand the problem. And I think as the weeks and months unfold, we're going to be talking about and with people that will help us define that so that we can end at a point where here's the path to a different relationship between these two opposing, seemingly opposing
yeah,
sides who really need each other for survival. And
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
So
so I
our
think,
goal really is to connect, isn't it? Our goal is to
yeah,
connect between us, to bring people together, to make this shift happen because it's desperately needed.
right. I think we facilitate, collaborate, encourage people to work together, and then to some degree be the conscience so that those commitments take place and it happens, and
Yeah,
it creates new habits that become industry standards that become a way for this industry to be what it has the potential to be. It's a great industry, so we keep hanging around it.
I know. And I don't see, I think our industry's got so much longevity just because, as I said, it doesn't matter what happens with technology, what happens with AI, what happens to all of
Yeah,
that. People still want to make, create, and feel something. And you can only do that with actually creating something. It doesn't work on a screen. You have to touch, feel, look, see, smell, everything to
yeah,
feel that thing. So I think
yeah.
we're all
Agreed.
naturally makers, whether you are a crafter, artist, baker, writer, whatever you are, we're all makers at heart. And we just want to bring people together.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
So I think we should, in summing up, let's just say
Yeah.
if you resonate with anything that Steve and I have shared today, and you would like to join us on the Retail Rebellion, please reach out to one or both of us, because these discussions and programs will be ongoing, and follow us as we go on this journey together.
Wow. I love it. Retail Rebellion. It's
Retail
time.
Rebellion, it's happening.
Yeah. Yep. All
Okay,
right. Great.
join us on the next one, and we'll see you soon.